Hello and welcome back to another unbelievably wild episode of the Bible in 1 year with the preacher's husband. Today we are talking about Psalm 131, 138, 139, 143, 144, and 145. Tomorrow we're going to talk about First Chronicles chapter 26, 27, 28, and 29, and also Psalm 127. So we're getting some longer readings here for the next little while. So we'll dive right into Psalm 131, and it is titled in the CSB, A Childlike Spirit. The King James, it says, Simple Trust in the Lord. That's the title. This is a song of ascents of David. Now, humility characterizes the faithful who depend on the Lord and exalt him in this psalm. It's only 3 verses, but it also talks about Israel should adopt the attitude of an infant, depending on the Lord for protection and nurture, as opposed to trying to do everything yourself. Now we'll move on to 138. Psalm 138. The title in the CSB is A Thankful Heart. The title in the King James is The Lord's Goodness to the Faithful. Now, one thing that stuck out to me here was verse 7 and 8. Verse 7 and 8 are, If I walk into the thick of danger, you will preserve my life. For the anger of my enemies, you will extend your hand. From the anger of my enemies, you will extend your hand. Your right hand will save me. The Lord will fulfill his purpose for me. Lord, your faithful love endures forever. Do not abandon the work of your hands. Now, in light of what the psalmist knows about God, he expresses confidence in the future, which is something that we should do. Be confident. Believe that God is going to do exactly what he says he's going to do, and that we can rely on him. We can do it. We can rely on him. All right. Psalm 139. In the CSB, the title is The All-Knowing, Ever-Present God. God's Perfect Knowledge of Man is the title in the King James Version. A couple of verses stuck out for me in this one, and the story stuck out. This was, of course, a Psalm of David. But verse 13 says, For it was you who created my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. Your eyes saw me when I was formless. This is verse 16. Your eyes saw me when I was formless. All my days were written in your book and planned before a single one of them began. Now, referring to 13, humankind is the Lord's possession and his creation. Did you get that? The Lord's possession and his creation. You do not own your body. God owns your body. You do not own yourself at all. You are God's creation. God owns you. He possesses you. So, keeping that in mind, that gives you a completely different perspective on life. And speaking of somebody who had a different perspective on life, dun dun dun, the Pope. So here we have not our current Pope, but this is actually Pope John Paul II. And he addressed a crowd of over 375,000 people from 70 different countries in a mass that was celebrated at Cherry Creek State Park, Colorado, as a part of World Youth Day back on August the 15th in 1993. Now, I'm using this quote by Pope John Paul in reference to Psalm 139, verse 13 that we just read. The Pope said, A culture of death seeks to impose itself on our desire to live and live to the full. In our own century, as at no other time in history, the culture of death has assumed a social and institutional form of legality to justify the most horrible crimes against humanity: genocide, final solutions, ethnic cleansings, and massive taking of lives of human beings even before they are born, or before they reach the natural point of death. In much of contemporary thinking, any reference to a law guaranteed by the Creator is absent. There remains only each individual's choice of this or that objective as convenient or useful in a given set of circumstances. No longer is anything considered intrinsically good and universally binding. The family, especially, is under attack, and the sacred character of human life is denied. Naturally, the weakest member of society are the most at risk: the unborn, the children, the sick, the handicapped, the old, the poor, the unemployed, the immigrant, and the refugee. You must feel the full urgency of the task. Woe to you if you do not succeed in defending life. The church needs your energies, your enthusiasm, your youthful ideas in order to make the gospel of life penetrate the fabric of society, transforming people's hearts and the structures of society in order to create a civilization of true justice and love. Goodness. I truly wish that our Pope now would heed the words of Pope John Paul II. Growing up, he was probably one of my heroes that I looked up to when I would see him come on TV. I always wondered what the Pope was going to say. Even though I'm not Catholic, I always had a lot of respect and reverence for him. I wonder what he would think about what our current Pope is doing right now and what he's saying. I have a feeling that he probably wouldn't have liked it. We're going to move on. Psalm 143 is next. Psalm 143. The title in the CSB is A Cry for Help. The title in the King James is An Earnest Appeal for Guidance and Deliverance. And of course, it starts out, Lord, hear my prayer. Of course, as I have started off many of prayers. This psalm was definitely a story of David. It was basically his story in summation when I look at it. And the more I read it, it was very, very much David. I'm going to move on to 144. If anything stuck out to you in 143, put it in the comments. 144, title is A King's Prayer in the CSB, and in the King James, it's A Song to the Lord who preserves and prospers his people. Now, this psalm has a number of similarities with portions of Psalm 8 and 18. Isaiah also developed some of these same themes that happen in Psalm 144. A couple of verses stuck out to me. Verse 3, Lord, what is human that you care for him, a son of man that you think of him? This verse is on God's concentrated attention on and his intimate knowledge of humanity. Like we were talking about in 139, humanity. He knows all about us. Verse 4, a human is like a breath. His days are like a passing shadow. The life of a human here is compared to a mere breath, reinforcing the fleeting nature of human existence. Now, I gotta say, if I sit and think about all the eternity that happened before I was born, then I think about all the eternity that's going to happen after I die. You put it into that perspective, yeah, our lives are basically an infinitesimal little speck. They're just a teeny tiny piece of the huge eternal pie. We're going to go on to 145. Praising God's Greatness is the title in the CSB. The title in the King James Version is A Son of God's Majesty and Love. A Song of God's Majesty and Love, excuse me. This is actually an acrostic psalm. That means each verse begins with a different letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it has marked similarities with Psalm 111. The Masoretic text has no line beginning with the Hebrew letter Nun. So I found that interesting. So it's actually missing a letter here. But that lost letter is in here. But the text just left out one verse, essentially, is what they did. If you read verse 13 here of Psalm 145, it says, your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. Your rule is for all generations, period. And that's where it ends. The next letter, or the next verse, which should have been 14, but it's not, the part that was left out starts with Nun, and it says, the Lord is faithful in all his words and gracious in all his actions. So, again, this is an acrostic poem, but in Hebrew, one of the letters was missing, which we talked about. But it is supplied by the LXX. This is the section, the second half of verse 11, as I said in the CSB. Its deletion in the original Hebrew manuscripts were probably accidental, because when they translated those over, they probably accidentally left that out. Just knowing that that's what it is. So, verse 18 stood out to me. The Lord is near all who call out to him, all who call out to him in integrity. The CSB says, with integrity. This version here says, the Lord is near to all who call on him, to all who call on him in truth. That word integrity, in truth. Are you honest? Do you tell the truth? Do you do things in truth? Do you do things with integrity? That's the question for you today. Now, I hope this has touched you. If it has, click the like button and the subscribe button. And of course, click the little jingle bell so you can get notified next time I upload a video, which will be tomorrow. And we'll see you then for another episode of the Bible in 1 Year with the Preacher's Husband.